Well, hey, Diet Disruptors, Carrie here, and we have a very, very special episode today. Today is one that I hope will resonate with you in more ways than I can count. We have our youngest podcast guest we've ever had, but I really believe this will be one of the most impactful. So let me first introduce you to Annika Lindahl. Annika is I just recently graduated from high school, senior, moving into her freshman year of college, and she has a story to tell around disordered eating, around growing up with a really problematic relationship about food and her body, and the exact reason why I ended up finally making the changes I needed to make as a mom when I saw some of these same signs in my own kids at just 5 and 6 years old. So Annika, first of all, before we get into it, thank you so much for joining us. I want everybody to say hello to Annika. How are you, Annika, today? Are you ready for this? You excited? You nervous?
Yeah, I'm so excited. Thank you for having me. This is an honor to be a part of this podcast.
Well, you are one of the strongest young women I know, and knowing just what I have gone through in my life around disordered eating, I never would have been able to, at your age, got onto a public forum in this way and been able to share my story. I wouldn't have even been articulate enough or self-aware enough to be able to do it. So thank you for being here. You are going to impact so many lives by doing this.
Thank you.
All right. So before we really get started, if you're watching this live along with us, please just put some great words of encouragement for Annika. This is her first podcast. But I will say this, Annika was a featured guest on our new daily nutrition show on Brinx TV. You can go to Brinx, BRINX.TV, and check out the NIL House Nutrition, the epicenter of all things nutrition. And Annika was featured there during one of our episodes on disordered eating. And so, Annika, even though this is your first podcast, this isn't your first time in front of the camera. So you had a little bit of practice already, right?
Yeah.
And you were amazing.
Thank you.
All right. So I just want to share a little bit about why this is so important to me. We're going to talk about disordered eating today. We're going to talk about it because a recent study came out that I was on the Today Show for a little while ago. And it was about how 1 in 5 kids show signs of disordered eating. Now, disordered eating, meaning having an inappropriate relationship with food or your body, an inappropriate obsession or thought process around gaining weight, around your body image, and believing that food needs to be restricted, or there's a fear of food, or an over consumption of all things around nutrition, food, because of a need to look a certain way, or belief that your body is not where it needs to be. And so while 1 in 5 kids have signs of this, which is what the Today Show came to me to talk about, we know that 75% of women have reported having disordered eating. So if us women are raising these kids, I would tell you right now that the statistic is higher than 1 in 5 kids. My 2 girls at 5 and 6 years old started talking about calories. Now at 16 and 18 years old, they're in a way better place. Thank God they said that to me when they did, because it was my own disordered eating that I thought I was keeping a secret from them that was clearly rubbing off. And if I was 2 for 2 and an educator, a behavior specialist, and someone that was really careful with my language, and I was at 100% of my kids showing signs of that, I guarantee those of you that have this mindset and belief around food and your body and it being problematic, if you have what you would consider some sort of disordered relationship with food in your body, your thoughts and your beliefs will always dictate your actions, and it will rub off on your kids. And I remember growing up as a kid, I was actually really, really skinny. I was body shamed all the time for being as skinny as I was. I then became a college cheerleader where my weight was the determining factor as to whether or not I was able to do my sport. And at the end of my college career, I remember being physically unable to eat because of the fear that if I did, I would get fat. And if I got fat, I would have no value. And that perseverated a cycle of disordered eating that lasted, well, that will last probably my entire life, but I have it so far under control now and experienced food freedom. But it really hit very hard right after I was pregnant. I had gained about 80 pounds and realized for the first time in my life while I was pregnant, I could eat anything I wanted without feeling guilt. But then as soon as I had my first child, that is when everything set in again. And I was on this yo-yo that I did not know how to get off of. And a big part of it was because I didn't know about food. I didn't understand my body and I didn't understand my self-worth. So Annika, just sharing a little bit about my story, I want you to share a little bit of yours. And before we get into that, let's talk about the signals and the messages you heard as a kid growing up, because I know that it was not intentional by the women in my life. And I certainly was trying to hide it from my kids. So even though you ended up with an eating disorder and are still recovering from that, it wasn't like people purposely did things to make you feel a certain way. So what were the messages that you've been hearing growing up? And tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I grew up in a diet culture family type thing where there was a lot of diets when I was younger and a lot of like good and bad foods like, oh, don't have the cake or make sure you have your vegetables before dinner and stuff like that if you're hungry. And
Now,
like
wait
it
a
was
second. That seems like something a lot of people would say. Make sure you eat your vegetables before you have this others, before you can have dessert, eat everything on your plate. But those are the
Mhm.
kind of things that start to contribute to us not understanding how food really works and shaming us.
Yeah. It was making me almost like afraid of like the fattening type foods
Mhm.
instead of like my safe foods. And also like I was a competitive dancer, so growing up in the dancer industry where you had to look a certain way to fit
Mhm.
in and you had to be this certain image that is kind of like unrealistic, so it made me in that thought process that was very like toxic for me.
You know, that is so interesting because I talk to women all the time, as well as my team, and I'll ask them about their kids. And a lot of them will say, oh, my kids are athletes. They are fine. They eat whatever they want. But as an athlete yourself, as a former athlete for me, and I can think about Stacy, who is in her 50s and a former Division I college soccer player. And it's when we're not moving our bodies the way that we were, and you're still too young to realize to probably know about this, but like once you stop with your sport, like we don't have any information or knowledge about what to do. And therefore, it's like a lot of us athletes actually, I don't want to say had it worse because there's no way I want to compare, but really struggle coming out of their sport because
Yeah.
we just don't know. Just because we're athletic didn't mean that we had the knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. And also like going into middle school and everything, like in order to be popular, like social media took a huge hit on me and how I saw my body and my worth, which was really unfortunate.
So keep going then. Now, because this had been part of your life for a very long time,
Yeah.
but then it really started to impact daily choices you were making. Talk about what
hmm
what was happening and how old were you when it really you really were, I think, maybe more cognizant of making certain choices.
I want to say freshman year is when it really hit, like transitioning and COVID especially made a huge impact. I started like restricting a lot, like restricting carbs, like being on almost the keto diet and everyone thinking that that's okay. I
Because people
really,
say that that's what we have to do, and
yeah,
that's what
exactly.
women are doing left and men are doing left and right, right?
Yeah, and so I started like losing some weight, and I had people complimenting me, almost encouraging the body changes.
How
And
many of you, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. You just say so
no,
many
it's
quick nuggets that I want to make sure people hear. How many of you see somebody that lost weight and say, "Oh, you look so good," as if before they didn't, as if before they weren't as good as they are now? So, huge important piece to notice when we
mhm,
compliment somebody on their body like that, and
yeah.
especially girls.
Yeah, and I thought that was okay. I started over exercising a lot, like
Mm.
really weird hours, and I wasn't doing these exercises before. Like I would go running a lot and doing like sit-ups like at before every meal, after every meal. And no one stopped me at the time, and I thought it was okay.
Did
I
anybody
also
ask you about it, or it was just
They were like, "Okay, she's getting into shape for dance."
yeah.
Like, and that's the excuse that I was saying. I was like, "Oh, like I just want to work up my stamina for the running so I can dance longer and just have the energy." And I thought it was normal at the time. I also like didn't want to go to social events. So like I always said I was busy because I was afraid of the pizza or like the cakes. So I didn't really want to go out to lunch with friends. So I made a lot of excuses on that. And I disengaged in a lot of family dinners and breakfasts and stuff
So
like
what
that.
did that look like, disengaging in family meals?
I like wouldn't come down, or I'd be like, oh, like I'm working on a homework assignment, and I was just like busy. Like I just said I was when I really wasn't.
Wow. This is so important for parents to hear because they are listening to you right now thinking, wait a minute, my daughter or my son is doing this. What are some of those signs in addition to that, either in terms of what you were saying or any other little bits that you can help parents to be able to recognize signs of this kind of either disordered eating or the body image issues?
Hmm. So, I mean, if you start noticing that your kid is like disengaging, or if your kid is over exercising, have that open dialogue. Don't be afraid to come at them saying, like, hey, and like, what's going on? Or why are we doing this? Don't be afraid to say something because that might be the changer.
So, who in your life finally noticed something and did you believe them?
So at first, I was very lucky to have a doctor who noticed some like hormonal changes and like blood pressure and heart rate stuff. Who finally said like your daughter has a diagnosed eating disorder. But I actually had a teacher come up to me and say some stuff that was like worried for my health because I wasn't really focusing on schoolwork. I wasn't really dancing and performing to the best of my ability. And she sat me down and we had a conversation, and she helped me find like special help and counseling.
Did you believe it was a problem at first?
No, I really denied it, and I denied it when I was in treatment. It didn't take me until, like, I wanna say, like, a couple months that I was like, "Man, I really do have a problem. I do have an eating disorder, and I need to change this now."
What was the point that helped you to see that?
I realized that I didn't wanna put my life on hold on a scale, on like, a number on the scale. Like, I realized that I wanna be a dancer. I wanna be smart. I wanna have a life that's not focused on food. I didn't wanna be consumed in my 50s, like, how much calories did I have in one day? Like, that's not what I wanted in life. Like, I wanted to enjoy free time with friends. I wanted to enjoy my time with my family. Like, I love myself more than what my body looked like.
I need every single woman. You're making me really emotional right now because what you just described is what the majority of women is how they live today.
Mhm.
And I think we think it's normal. I think we think this is what we just do. And when
Yeah.
we really hone in and we really get honest with ourselves and realize, is this what life is all about? I always say we were not put on this earth to find the right diet, but we live like we were, that we were put on
Mhm.
this earth to weigh a certain amount and look a certain way. And yet every single one of us has a purpose on this earth so much bigger than that. And you figuring this out at, what were you, 16 when you figured this out? 17? How old were you when that happened?
17 is when I really had the change in mindset. Yeah.
How lucky you are in so many ways to have this now. And I really
Mhm.
believe that it's so that you can influence and impact your
Yeah.
generation. But think about what you're doing for the generation of women like me who are still living that way and have been
Mhm.
since they were 17 or before. And when you think about 20, 30, 40 years in this cycle, it's time for it to stop, which is why I started Disruptive Nutrition. It's why you're getting on the podcast and did our show. And it's also why you and I are going to start. We're going to announce this little amazing piece of news that you and I are going to start a whole new podcast, a separate podcast called Diet Disruptors for Teens, because you have a voice and you need to use it. And together with my story and where I am now, with your story, where you are now, we're going to be influencing and changing a whole generation because of what you've gone through. Are you excited about that?
I'm so excited. It's something that needs to be talked about and it can't get pushed under the rug.
Because it impacts, I need everybody to comment right now. If you believe and you know in your heart that there are issues around your body and food that you have to resolve. And I'm going to tell you that if that is you and you have kids or grandkids or influence anybody, all of those beliefs get put on to the people that you love the most and influence the most. So together as a family, we are going to work to be able to undo all of this cycle that society, that our culture, that we've grown up for too long and have thought of as normal. So Annika, let's keep going a little bit, because you have gotten help in a way that I did not get when I was your age. And as you have told me some of the stories about how you were treated, how treatment went, I'm going to be honest. I wouldn't want a girl like you to have to go through that to get healing. Can you talk a little bit about what you had to go through, what treatment is like? And I don't want to knock it. I really don't. But I also don't believe, as a behavior specialist, as an educator, as a special educator, that I think there's a lot of work to do in the way that we treat this once we get to that diagnosis. I want to not get to that diagnosis. I want us in our families and our homes and our culture to circumvent this and stop it from ever having to go through what you went through to get help. Talk about what your treatment entails.
Yeah. So my doctor recommended that I would attend a PHP, which stands for Partial Hospitalization Program. So what I had to do was I had to attend school, and then I would have to leave at 11 o'clock every day to attend this program and I would get home around like 10 o'clock at night. So what I had to do was I had to have snack there. I had to have dinners there with a bunch of other girls too, and boys that were part of the treatment. And I was in the adolescence program, so only kids that were under 18. And there are different types of therapies. There are dialectal behavioral therapies, cognitive disorder behavioral therapies, and there's family therapy, and I had to meet with a dietitian, and I had to get vitals like twice a week. And it was just a lot. It was really hard for my family. Like, I love them so much with how much they put up with and treatment, how much commitment they did. But it was a lot with a meal plan. They always kind of like told me, like, if I wasn't a certain weight by a certain day, like, residential was very high. And I was always on that line of like, she's going to be sent to residential any second. And that was really scary for me because I never really knew.
And again, that was based on your weight.
It was based on my weight and some vitals, but it was mostly like weight numbers. Like, they had a weight for me. And then I got put down to IOP, which is intensive outpatient, which meant the hours are shorter, but I still missed out a lot on school. And I'm someone who loves school, and getting pulled out of school, missing out on Spanish class, missing out on history, like, I was so sad, and missing out on special activities. Like, I was restricted from dance team. So I couldn't dance anymore or do any type of exercise, which made me really, really miserable. And my depression really got high, and anxiety was really high too.
Right. And so they're trying to save your life. Let's be honest. They're trying to get enough food inside of you so that you live. But at the same time, you're being taken away from the things that you love, and you're also being forced to eat. Right. And really being it's a fear driven, in some ways it's fear driven. If you don't eat, if you don't get to a certain weight, you are going to go to residential. And so now I will say, on the other side of it, some of the therapy and some of the behavioral and cognitive stuff that you have learned and you can talk about and repeat and use has been super beneficial. But there's
Mhm.
just this layering of emotions and trauma a lot around the food, around the fear that is really hard to undo. And that's
Yeah.
scary for you to go through because you've missed out on so much, which you'll be resentful for. And you've come through on this other side in a way that is incredible, but that's not typical. Like
Mhm.
your success is not typical results. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, after I got a IOP that first time, I relapsed in this summer. Like, I completely relapsed, and so I had to go to another IOP program where my parents actually had control of all my food. So I couldn't even touch a single food item. I just got a plate in front of me and was just expected to finish it, or else residential was on the line again. And being pulled out of school completely, like, scared me to death. So I was like, okay, I'll just complete anything that's in front of my face right now. And it was really, really hard because I had days where it's like I had one day where I like literally threw my apples across the room. And like I felt so bad looking back at it because my parents, I love them again, I'm saying it again, like really were in such a scary situation where they had to do it because it was
And
too late.
and that's where the idea of therapy and putting it into somebody else's hands to me is not an option. We
Mhm.
need to figure out our own stuff first. Because if we don't figure out our own stuff, there's no way we're going to be able to help our kids figure it out. There's no way we're going to say the things that aren't like, oh, you look so cute today. Or, oh, why don't we, um, eat your dinner before you have dessert. Or we say things like, we grab a piece of cake at a party and say, oh gosh, I'm being so bad. I'm having a piece of cake.
Yeah.
Right? We say things without realizing it. And until our own thoughts and beliefs are front and center and our self awareness is at a super high level, we will unconsciously say things that will contribute to disordered eating. Now, I get it that Annika's story you may feel like might be, well, that's not where my kids are. Your parents didn't think that was what was going to happen either.
No.
And I know your parents and I know how much they love you. Nobody was trying to say the things. It happens, and it happens in every family. And your story is really lucky because you had a
Mhm.
doctor that noticed that some of the things that were going on in your body, like with your periods and things like that, were not typical. And then you had a teacher. And as a former educator, I could tell you that there are not enough teachers that are noticing these little things about their kids. And how
Mhm.
many of them slip through the cracks? How many of you slip through the cracks? And somebody could have said something to you or talked to you. But Annika was lucky where people noticed
Mhm.
and then it got to a really significant place. But I would argue that so many girls, especially, but girls and boys, have they actually people dug into their thinking and what's going on? We would see a huge number of people that could be justified in even going into therapy around
Yeah.
disordered eating or eating disorders. And
Mhm.
so I want to circumvent that. And I don't necessarily think, I'm not saying that it's necessary. I'm saying it's important to start the conversation because the realization that we are not meant to weigh a certain amount, we can start to have those mindset shifting conversations now.
Mhm.
Annika, I think one of the things that is important to help people see is that you you were my intern for a while, and this is how I got to know your story and you. And you, in working with us, made some really interesting observations about the way that we work and what we
Mhm.
say and what we do. I always say if you want something different, you have to do something different. And so talk a little bit about what you observed um, me and my team and what we do with disruptive nutrition that can really help parents with their own issues and help them with the conversations that they're having with their own kids.
Yeah, so I really love your program because there is so much information. Like you have videos on almost every single topic, and you have what over 150 podcasts that I'm like listening to them all, and I love them all because as someone who went through treatment and everything, there wasn't a lot for me to learn. It was mostly for my parents. And they're like, yes, there was the therapies that you were talking about, but there wasn't a lot of food information. And you give a lot of science and just like pure evidence of just how your program works and how you can have a longer sustainable lifestyle and how you can continue it. And I think that's really important too, because going into treatment, like I said before, like I can get to the weight goal that they wanted me to get to, or whatever that number is, but that doesn't prevent me from relapsing. And a lot of the programs just didn't have the prevention for relapse, but your program does. Your program has um, the Facebook group that you can stay in contact with, how you can have continued support. Right when you join, you're never leaving the family. And I love that.
Mhm.
And I think that's really important to have that support. So, yeah.
Monica, I think you said something that was really important because so many people that work with us, they get to all of like, or, or that are following us or whatever it is, it's just about getting to a certain weight low enough.
Hmm.
And what's so crazy to me, the thing that I like till my dying day will work on fixing is that for girls like you, for treatment centers like your, it's about getting to a certain weight, but it's the same exact thing. It's just a larger number. It's the same mindsets. It's the same disordered thinking, and there's still a fear there of food. You're doing it for the wrong reasons. Our why is what's so important. And at
Yeah.
your age now, you have dug into a why that I think most adults would be envious of because you have figured out what's really important when it takes so many of us
Mhm.
decades of failing and going around the mountain before we really see the reason why we need to focus on our body and ourselves in a healthy way.
Yeah.
And when you're in treatment, it's literally just the opposite of a diet. It's still around like getting to a certain number.
Yeah.
Ugh,
And there's really not a number. Like that number is so false because it changes every week. It's really about the blood sugar stabilization and like the number, even if you wanted to lose weight, there's never a low enough number in your mind. So
that was true
developing
for you, right?
goals. Yeah. It was just like, oh mom, like it's just a couple more pounds that I want to lose. No, that wasn't true at all. Like it just kept going. It just kept
But
going
you
down and
believed it
down.
was true. Am I right?
Yeah, I did believe it was true. I was like, I have a certain number, but then when I got lower than that certain number, I was like, okay, maybe I could go a little bit more. Having that skill is so toxic too. Like, get rid of it, please. Like, as much as Carrie says that, like, please get rid of the scale. It's so toxic for your mind and it consumes so much of your energy that it's so unnecessary and it wastes time out of your deserving, meaningful life.
Can't you all see how powerful this podcast will be? Annika's going to lead it and I will be there to support. But I mean, your teenagers, anybody you know, be ready to share this with them because it will be powerful. So, Annika, tell us about what your life is like now. What is your
Yeah.
why? Let's just reiterate that. And then what does your daily life look like now that you are not in treatment in the way that you were? What decisions you've made about college and all of these things. Tell us a little bit more
Mhm.
about today.
My life feels so freeing and I'm beyond grateful with all the support. My parents, my teachers, and my social workers and all my therapists. I'm just beyond lucky to have the people who are in my life encouraging me in my corner every single day. Um, but as of now, I've been a school mentor, a peer mentor in my school where I teach dialectal behavioral therapy. So I focus on anxiety, and then sometimes I do disordered eating topics if kids in school really struggle. But I'm going to continue that work, hopefully in college and hopefully with disruptive nutrition and PFC theory. But yeah, I can go to social events, having a fun time with friends, and being like, it's okay to have ice cream. I love ice cream. I almost have it like almost every week now. And I'm not afraid of that. I love it. I love trying new flavors. And I actually love cooking like with my family and having balanced meals. I love going on mindful walks, not over exercising myself because I know that's toxic for me personally. But I allow myself to have some free time outside when I'm in a good mindset. And my why is I want to go to college. I don't want to worry about food when I'm in my 50s. And I just want to enjoy the time that I have on this earth while I can and just enjoy it without food consuming me.
Oh my gosh, I never cry. All you're doing is making me cry this whole time, and I love it because I can only imagine how people on the other side of this screen are feeling right now. I think this is truly the most impactful episode we've ever done, and I am so proud of you. And I don't wish this upon anyone, and I wish you never had to go through this. And going through this at this age and coming through it the way you have, it doesn't mean you're not going to still struggle. But wow, what you
At
have in
all.
front of
Like there's a struggle almost like I'm nowhere near perfect. And no one who comes out of this recovered or working on this is perfect. Like I have slip up days, but then I know like, okay, tomorrow I can start again. The next meal I can start again. Like it's okay. It's not like it's gonna be a continuous path going downward. Recovery is non-linear and it's up and down. But as of right now, like I'm striving on the uphill.
Oh my gosh, I absolutely love it. And so if you are ready to hear more Annika, then stay tuned. We will make sure we announce the launch of our new podcast. Annika, you're going to make such a difference. You going through this is just going to change the lives of so many. And so thank you for being here. You were a total rock star. You're born to be able to help people, and I'm so excited to be on this journey with you. If people have questions for Annika, she is a part of the Disruptive Nutrition team. You can put your comments in, you can ask questions. You will see her around. She is a part of the family. So Annika, thank you so much. I'm proud of you. You did an amazing job for your first podcast.
Thank you.
We'll see a whole lot more of you soon. And I'm going to need tissues now.
Oh.
Oh, you're the best.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, disruptors.